Hi, everybody. Welcome to Matner's Movie Musings. Today we'll be discussing three new movies that have come out recently. First, we'll be discussing the fifth in the seemingly never ending Purge saga. This one entitled The Forever Purge. Let's hope not. And second, we'll be reviewing Black Widow, the um, next installment in the once again, seemingly never ending, ongoing uh, Marvel saga. And we'll also be discussing the Tomorrow War, a new science fiction um, action adventure film. So, starting with The Forever Purge. Don't really have much to say on it, except that it is arguably the worst Purge film, at least since the first, easily since the first one. The first Purge film I thought was a good idea, uh, lousily concocted. I like the premise, but you've got this great idea going on outside, while the movie basically focuses itself inside one particular place. I understand that was due to budget constraints, but still, um, it was basically just a killer in the house uh, thriller that we've seen you know too many times. The second one opened it up a little bit and was a slightly stronger movie, but just didn't quite have the the bite that the premise really required. I feel like the film really did find its footing with the third film, the Purge election year, which I felt finally really grasps the full capacity of what the premise could pull off. I thought it was the nearly perfect Purge movie. It really encompassed the idea to its full capacity. We were able to see exactly what the Purge was, the horror of it, the all the sides of the the Purge, both the positives and negatives, the pro and cons, the the people that purged and the people that were victims. And I thought it did all that very well of encompassing that and really telling that story. Then we have the first Purge, which I think is the best movie. It's not necessarily the best Purge movie. Like I said, the election year I thought covered that whole world well, but the first Purge I feel like really gets to the underlying societal problems that would realistically lead to the Purge. And I feel like if the first Purge was actually the first Purge movie, it would be hailed as a classic. It really has a lot of um, great ideas mixed with a powerful message, and but doesn't it's not preachy or in any way. I mean, it's very much a genre movie. So, but there's that underlying current that's tried. They've tried to sneak into all the Purge films, but it really, I think they get to the heart of it in that movie. But we're here to talk about the Forever Purge, which unfortunately is it strips away all meaning and just goes for just the onslaught of horror and violence and racism and it's a nasty movie. It's well done. I mean, I think in a weird way, this is the one that I think the fans that of horror movies that these movies are basically advertised for and directed towards. I think this is the Purge movie that they've been waiting for, that just lets loose and forget plot, forget character development, just give us murder and mayhem. And this movie does that. It does try to give it a social message with the Mexican foreigners and the uh, some of that stuff. I can't even really even get into that because that makes the movie sound more serious than it really is, and I don't want to give it any sort of credit for any of that. So, but but yeah. So I mean, if you're into just full on violent horror, which I know a lot of people are, then you'll probably enjoy this movie. Even though, even in that sense, it's nothing special and it's not done all that well. But I mean, heck, neither were Friday the 13th, and they made 20 of those or whatever, and people, still go to them. So, and more power to them. So, anyways, let's move on. And much higher in class to a much better film that I was able to see in the theater, which was a nice, pleasant return. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been. Uh, oh, I apologize. I forgot that I do give the Forever Purge 3 stars out of 5. It does okay with what it tries to do, but it does no more than that. Anyways, Black Widow, I give 4 out of 5 stars too. And it's hard to believe that it's been 2 years since witnessing the last hurrah of the Avengers in Endgame. But then Black Widow was originally slated for last summer and had to be shelved when all movies all but disappeared for the last year. Um, Things seem to be getting back to normal-ish, and it was great to get back to the theater again. As much as I thoroughly enjoyed these movies, it was kind of nice to have the extra break in between this and the final Avengers movie. That 2 years, it sort of allowed the finality of that movie to sink in before we are brought into what is essentially the first in the next chapter in the Marvel franchise. And I mean, it is true that the film does actually take place, um, let's see, in the midst of the action of the previous chapter. It takes place between the events in Captain America: Civil War and Avengers of Infinity War, to be exact. And though there are some details that warrant knowing that information, it almost doesn't really matter where the film falls in the overall picture, because Black Widow is essentially a standalone story. Something that feels downright nostalgic at this point. I mean, you really have to go back, 10 years to Thor and Captain America back in 2011 for this kind of direct storytelling. And I think Black Widow is the best of the three. It certainly does a better job of strengthening its central character's persona and giving her a story that gets right to the heart of that. The film opens with a brief backstory for Natasha Romanoff as a child, where we meet her family and learn their tragic secrets. Then it quickly fast forward past what we've already seen to bring us to 2016, where Natasha learns that her sister, who she hasn't seen since childhood, is in trouble, and she's still trapped within the world in which Natasha actually was able to eventually escape. This leads to a family reunion and an intense emotional confrontation with the man responsible for Natasha's haunting, bloody past. The movie may not have the epic scope of many of the more recent entries, but that's actually a large part of the film's appeal. It's just a good old-fashioned, fun, and entertaining comic book movie. And I mean, after the last year we've just had, this is just the comic book movie we need right now. And I mean, leave it to Marvel to give that to us, because their Disney Plus shows certainly nourished us, through the quarantine. So it's only fitting that they be the first to welcome us back to the theater once it's all over. So, a very good thriller and everything that you would want from Natasha Romanoff Black Widow film. It's just a shame that, spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen the previous movies and intend to, which, I mean, you've had plenty of time in quarantine to do so, but, of course, now Natasha is dead, and we finally get the movie that we've been waiting for, and only makes us want to see her more. But there you go. That's Marvel, never doing the expected thing. So, and they've been successful at it so far. So again, more power to them. Now we go way down in quality, even worse, unfortunately, than the Purge films. We come to the Tomorrow War, which I give 2 stars out of 5, just shy of complete bomb. Basically only for, I don't know, I was being generous maybe, but no, there's some character and performances that make it somewhat bearable, but not much. So, I mean, had the Tomorrow War been released a year ago, during quarantine, it may have been easier to let it slide and just enjoy some popcorn Hollywood entertainment. But now that the theaters are opening again and Hollywood is once again producing new material, this just won't cut it. I mean, either way, it's a bad movie, which is really a shame too, because Chris Pratt is such a charming actor, and he's championed it so much that I was expecting it to be a nice, lighthearted action comedy, that the kind he does so well, a la Guardians of the Galaxy. The fact that it is the live-action debut of Chris McKay, the director behind the Lego Batman movie, made this all but seem inevitable. Unfortunately, The Tomorrow War is a straightforward sci-fi actioner that not only takes its plot and characters way too seriously, but said plot and characters in question are all generic stereotypes and tired cliches. Its plot is like a mixed bag of greatest hits from the last 50 years of sci-fi movies. A touch of The Matrix, a bit from 12 Monkeys, a dollop of The Fifth Element, a hint of Predator, a chunk of Edge of Tomorrow, and a whole lot of Alien. Now, I try not to fault a movie based on plot originality. I mean, if it's done well and with enough style, cleverness, and or wit, any story can be made to seem fresh. The problem here is that there's none of that here, and it seems that the film doesn't even try to be original in any way. This is by the numbers, clinical filmmaking at its worst. Take the Pratt character. He is a loving father and husband who has failed to find success, but is given a chance to prove himself once and for all under the worst possible circumstances. That's really all you need to know about his character, because if you've ever seen a movie before, you will know his character's entire trajectory within the first 10 minutes. And the fact that Pratt is forced to play it straight-faced rather than with a wink and a smile, it's a confinement for him and an insult to his audience. The creatures that they go to war with are clearly just special effects targets for them to shoot at. Their creators gave them little thought beyond what they'd seen in previous movies. But setting aside all the other ridiculous elements, what bothered me the most were the characters and the casting. There are 3 interesting actors in the leads, and you wouldn't know that if this is where you're first encountering them. First and foremost, you have Pratt, who, as I said, is usually so charming, but also confident and assured. But here, for the first time, he seems like a stiff, underdeveloped actor going through the motions and collecting a paycheck. His co-star, Yvonne Strahovski, who fares the best, is able to deliver a performance that brings weight to her character and draws us into her efforts. But her dialogue and character arc are so overwrought and forced that her efforts almost backfire, as we wonder what the hell she's doing in such a cornball picture. Lastly, there is the distinctive J.K. Simmons, who is completely wasted here, brought on to simply give motivation and emotional depth to Pratt's character. It's one of those performances that begs us to holler, "Hey, there's so-and-so," with an appreciative smile. The fact that this film is nearly 2.5 hours only goes to further our frustration. Yet it does allow for a surprisingly delightful final 30 minutes that, if you're still awake by then, actually gives Pratt and Simmons the screen time together to allow their characters to participate in the kind of banter and camaraderie that the film needed all along. Now, I've heard talks of a sequel, and I hope their better natures prevail. But if they do in fact go ahead, here's hoping that it's half as long and 100 times more fun, with the focus on the repartee between Pratt and Simmons. One last thought. Pratt seems to be following a very similar career path to the one that slowly doomed that of Bruce Willis. Starting his career as a charming and affable goof on television, transitioning that persona to the big screen, only to find success with that persona in an action movie environment. And instead of building further upon original persona, Pratt, like Willis, seems to be trying to leave it completely behind in favor of straight action. And that would be a shame, because action heroes are a dime a dozen, but Pratt is a singular personality that is greatly lacking in the movies. That's why he's a star. That's why we go to his pictures. So here's hoping he returns to roles that cast him for who he is, not just because The Rock turned it down. Now, I realize I didn't mention the plot too much in there, so I will just let you know that basically there's a war going on in the future. They recruit people from the present to time warp to the future to fight ugly, nasty alien monsters that look basically like the creatures from Starship Troopers. That's it. That's essentially what the movie's about, and that's all you need to know to decide whether to see it or not see it. I recommend not seeing it, but to each their own. So anyways, well, thank you so much for joining me, and please like and subscribe on YouTube, share on Facebook, if you will, whatever platform you find this on, and And until next time, we'll see you at the movies.